Quick couple of disclaimers before this video starts, and I can only apologise. Disclaimer number one is the video itself seems really bright and I look slightly green at certain points. Now, unfortunately, I thought we was recording in what's called S-Log 3. Without going into too much detail, it's like a bland finish on a video. It means you can edit a lot better than what you can by a standard picture profile 0. The second thing I need to say is I didn't really stop at too many points in the video and talk to camera so you guys know exactly what's going on and more importantly what's going through my head doing these videos. I had a real limited amount of time to get this particular video done, just purely down to my availability over the next few weeks in order to have 4, 5, 6 hours to get this project moving. Other than that, thank you guys for your patience. It's all a good learning curve, and look, I don't claim to be some professional videographer who's done this for years. I'm very much like you guys. I enjoy content and I'm trying to learn as I'm going. So hopefully you guys are cool with that, and yeah, I'll see you at the end of the video. Hi guys, and welcome back to the Aprilia RS660 rebuild. Now I can only apologise, it's been so long since the last video from the strip down. It's for a few different reasons. So I don't have unlimited capital for this rebuild. I'm just like you guys, work a normal job, bikes is a hobby for me, and I just like documenting stuff. So it takes a little bit longer for me to get the funds to be able to do it. Now, secondly, the big thing I struggled with is getting the parts readily available without spending extortionate amounts for brand new parts, such as the fuel tank and all that sort of stuff. Not only the cost side of things, but also the delivery and availability of them. Because believe it or not, it's actually very hard getting parts for this bike. But we've got everything we need now, with exception to the motorbike fairings. Now that's going to be covered in the next couple of videos, but for now, let's go through all the cost of everything that I've got on my phone. Now, where does that leave us? So the total cost for our project so far, assuming we don't need to get any other items, is £4,871 and 3 pence. In my opinion, sub 5 grand for an RS660 with less than 2,000 miles on it, I think is phenomenal. But that's where we're at the moment. Now, it's pointless sitting here talking about the figures and numbers and what bits and pieces we bought for it. I think it's time to get the gloves on and get started with the rebuild. It will forever amaze me how hard it is to move a bike when there's no handlebars and you've got nothing to grip onto whatsoever. But anyway, we move. Rear paddock stand just to stabilise the bike, make life a little bit easy for me as the day goes on. Now with the gloves on, we're all good to get started. Now the new fuel tank didn't come with the pump, any components to it, anything like that. So what we're doing is we're reusing the old components, which to be honest, there's nothing wrong with any of those from the old fuel tank going into the new one. So we start off by the fuel pump and all the internal mechanisms. It's quite a straightforward device to install. It's held in by 5 8mm hex bolts. And then the last bolt to go in is just a standard 5mm Allen key with a bracket that holds the fuel line in, I guess, in its place so it doesn't snap. As for the fuel cap itself, there's a small plastic interior. The fuel cap's really simple. Again, very similar process. A few bolts that hold it down and a silicone gasket that goes around the inside. Nice and straightforward. Now, the next thing I really wanted to do is to remove the triple clamp at the top. Now, the reason I wanted to do that is so I can install the new one. So when I do remove some items lower down on the forks, it's not going to put things out of line and cause me any further grief. Now, you can't quite see it there, but there is a small bracket on the underside of the triple clamp, and that's designed just to hold the clutch cable in place. So it passes through that little bracket in between the forks and round to the side, which is why you can see it goes through sort of diagonally. Now, again, we've not handled the handlebars on there. Trying to torque that top nut down to 100 Newton meters is bloody difficult. And then we just simply tighten the pinch bolts down to 25 Newton meters, and then we can move on to the next step. Now, this little bracket here, all that is the sort of front end of the nose cone, which you can see I've refitted in this segment here. And I was just taking the plate off of there, which has the number of the chassis on there, just to make it easy for people to identify it. Now, I haven't put it back onto this new one that I'm screwing in yet because I simply didn't have my rivet tool to hand. Now, once we put that front nose cone in, we've pushed all the plug connectors in there, which is really tight to get into such a small cramped space, but it's where 90% of the bike's controlled from. Plugging in the new start button switch there, push all the cables down, the headlight cable's just dangling at the bottom, plug in the screen, and then we're back into the front end, all being complete, back to how it was before the bike was damaged. Now I'm just screwing on this front cover here, and all that does, in all honesty, is just to cover those cable connections as I was speaking about a moment ago. So it's just a nice decorative finish. And we're screwing on the handlebars, making sure everything's nice and tight, so not going to twist and move, making sure I've got full range, it's nice and comfortable for the clutch lever there. Now, the button mechanism you see has a torque bolt underneath just to tighten things up so you can adjust it, and that was all done after I'd sat on the bike with the seat on and made sure I was 100% happy with it. Now on the brake lever side, the exact same process, we're just installing the handlebar, the brake kit itself, which is the master cylinder, the reservoir, and the brake lever all going back on. You can see there, just pushing in that start button, which again is a small Torx bolt underneath to make sure everything's 100% tight. Now, ever so slightly embarrassing with the braking system, if I'm being perfectly honest. So I started to bleed the system here. I was using a syringe kit, thinking the lines were completely dry. And I was really struggling. I got no feedback whatsoever. Couldn't bleed the system. Nothing was making sense in my head. The bleed kit was showing that the lines were completely full. And then it hit. I thought there's a small pin that's supposed to go between the brake lever and the master cylinder, and that pushes the piston to push fluid around the bike.
Believe it or not, we are 4 hours into this rebuild now, which you think, how the hell have you only done this much in 4 hours? And I'm gonna tell you exactly why I've only done this much in 4 hours. Now, the front end, I had to redo 3 times because silly boy right here decided that the cable for the headlights was actually the cable to plug in for the starter button switch. So I switched them round. Now, they're not the same design, they're totally different shape, but in my head, the plug that was facing the bottom was the one to go out at the bottom of this little air intake here. I was completely wrong. Anyway, had to redo that 3 times. Once we got the bars on, fine, no problem. Located like the clutch, the routing for the clutch cable and all that good stuff, no issues. Then we got to bleeding the brakes. Now, as I was pulling the brake lever, it felt non-existent. Now, I kind of expected it to an extent because part of the lines are completely dry now. We've got the new front brake reservoir and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of dry lines in there, but it just felt way too weak. Anyway, flip around the brake lever and the small little inset, there is a pin. If you look on the inside of your brake lever, you'll see a pin that goes in there and it pushes the piston, which then of course pushes the fluid round. That was missing out of this new kit that I bought. Thankfully, I kept a lot of the old bits and pieces, as you do before you get rid of stuff. And in the old bits in there had that little pin. Had I not have had that, brakes wouldn't have been blared, brakes wouldn't have worked, end of. So we've done that. We're now gonna look at tackling the steering damper. Now it's an aftermarket steering damper, and if I'm being honest, I'm not 100% sure this is gonna fit. I've got my thinking and reasons behind that, but we're gonna have a look anyway. We'll see if it fits, because if it does, happy days. But yeah, let's get on with that.
So now we've got the embarrassing moment out of the way of the brake system, we can then move on to the next step underneath the forks, which is what I really wanted to get onto, which is why I did the triple clamp first earlier. Now I'm installing a steering damper here. Now you think, well, what's happened to the original one? Didn't actually come with one, which really baffles me. A bike that's targeted towards a sort of race feel, it's an aftermarket extra. It's an optional extra if you want to have a steering damper. So I'm simply installing the bracket onto the forks, which replaced the existing pinch bolts. So they were all tightened down again to 25 Newton meters of torque with some thread lock in there as well, just to make 100% sure that they don't come loose. Now, the way a pinch bolt bracket works, it shouldn't come loose because it's constantly pulling against itself pressure-wise. Now, once that's installed, happy days, made sure it's all fully free left and right. It wasn't snagging on anything, which of course it wasn't. And then we move on to this sort of plastic inner panel that mounts to the radiator itself. Now that panel, it aids with holding the side fairing on, aligning up with the headlights and the front fairing, and it also holds this regulator or rectifier, whatever you want to call it, on the side. That device essentially keeps the battery voltage within a certain range whilst it's being used and whilst it's sat stagnant, and it just makes sure that it doesn't go out of that range as to not damage the battery or any components powered by the 12-volt system.
So I've just had this turn up, which is the headlights for the bike. Now the headlights we should be able to fit. The actual fairings we're not going to be able to do yet. Now we've got all of the under fairings at the side, which I'm going to have to transfer all the old components and hardware over onto these ones. There's going to be a couple of bits that I've going to need to get, which actually is handy because I've got all the new bolts which I'd ordered from ACCU. Until the fairings come, I need to bolt those onto the under panels and then they can all bolt on as one. So I'm going to have to wait until we get the fairings before we can do that. So for the time being, get these headlights out and see if these will fit onto here as it is.
So with the headlights here now, we can get underway with fitting that front section. I swear to God, every time I order something with Royal Mail, I start doing the project and then it turns up at the perfect time. Now I did look slightly confused looking at the headlights. I'm going to be honest, I thought they were the wrong ones that had turned up. I looked at the originals and then realised I was looking at it as an original with the front fairing still attached. So it just threw me off a little bit. But anyway, we got it all connected up, 4 screws that hold that in place, check the lights just to make sure they're all working, had a quick turn over the engine just to see if I could use the flash and pass button. And of course that all worked perfectly fine, as it should, because this is a brand new unit that I'd installed. Now, for those of you who've worked on the 660, you will know that these mirrors need to come off, but I just wanted to have them sit there just to see what they look like. Now, the fuel tank was really simple to put back on, seeing as it's all been rebuilt earlier on in the video. Plug connector on the right-hand side as you sit on the bike, And on the other side, you couldn't see this, but there's two overflow lines. You have one for the petrol overflow and one for the vapor. That's essentially your breather for the tank. And then quite a simple process of reinstalling the guide bolts and the rubber brackets at the front of the fuel tank, and the exact same at the back of the fuel tank. And once that's all tightened down, we shouldn't need to take that off anytime soon. The front key shroud cover is really simple to install. It's 2 bolts either side and almost like a friction Velcro. It's not one of those that touches and grips. You have to kind of wiggle it left and right to get it to latch and loop into the Velcros itself. And I'm just checking there that the steering lock's all working correctly and there's no snags or issues. Then working our way to the back of the bike, we've got the rear light bracket itself. Now that's a really clever little system. I really like how this bolts in. It's quite literally a case of 2 side bolts that hold it in, and it has this metal plate at the top as well as these rubber brackets to deal with the vibration. Now the metal plate has a job of basically holding in this rear cowling bracket. That holds the rear cowl itself, so a seat or a rear cowl, and it also holds the front seat down in position as well as the side fairings that will go on. Now of course we'll have to fit the side fairings and relieve some of those parts after, but I just wanted to test fit and make sure everything was okay. Now a nice little extra, this didn't have to be done, wanted to install a chain adjuster. Now the chain adjuster on this bike is pretty standard and to be honest, pretty much the same as every bike you're going to see. A bolt that goes all the way through the swing arm and then a nut that tightens against itself to make sure that you can keep the chain tight at all times. To install that, simply remove the threaded bolt all the way out and then put a new bolt which holds the new chain adjuster in. It hooks around the back of the swing arm, tightens itself through, and with a bit of thread lock, it's not going to go anywhere. And then reinstall a wheel, it's the exact same process in reverse. Pop the wheel in, hook the brake on, make sure it all sits nice and flush, make sure the spacers are in there in the sprocket carrier, connect the chain, and at this point, just quite simply adjust the chain tightness itself, and then re-torque that rear wheel back up to 120 Newton meters of torque. And that is pretty much that.
So that is everything for today's video. Now, what seems like a shorter video for you guys was actually a heck of a lot longer time for me. This took nearly double the amount of time to do all of these bits here than what it did to strip it down. I started this at 11:30, 12 o'clock this morning, and it's nearly 8 o'clock at night, so it took me a very long time. So let's have a quick recap of everything we've done and where we're up to and what we've got left to do with this bike. So starting off from the front end, of course, we rebuilt the entire front end. So we've done all of the cowling, the headlight brackets stay, the front screen, the wing mirrors, even though they've got to come off again, of course, when the new fairings get here, the headlights, everything on that front section has been completely rebuilt from start to finish. Now we've checked everything, you've seen me check it throughout the video, so the indicators are all working, the flashlight is working, the standard light is working, and the horn is working as well, so everything's reconnected. Working our way backwards, we've completely rebuilt this master cylinder and all the front brake system. That took me a heck of a lot longer than anticipated, and there's a really embarrassing reason why. All the instrument cluster on the left-hand side is done, as well as the right-hand side bar. Triple clamp has been fitted and torqued down. All of the bits and pieces under here have been done. We've also fitted the steering damper, which I think is going to change this completely. I just don't understand why they don't do it from factory, but it is what it is, I guess. Throttle's all fitted and connected. All of the side pieces have now been put back in, all of the under plastics. The fuel tank has been completely rebuilt and ready to go. And then yeah, we've got all the side panels at the back. We've got the rear cowl fitted, which again will come off when we get the fairings. And the rear light's been fitted as well. So this bike it's pretty much there. It just needs the fairings, the rear tail tidy, which we're going to be going to Quick Flip to get. We'll be covering that in another video because I'm going to be fitting that, which will be quite fun. And yeah, that's pretty much us for now. That's where we're up to. Now, the color of this tank is not going to be the color that we're going to go on the bike. I've got an idea of what color we're going to go for. So we'll have a nice tank cover to cover all of this. This will come up and sit on the tank cover and all that good stuff. Believe it or not, the tank covers for these actually fit really well. There was one on here previously and it was just, fitment was insane. So yeah, should be nice and easy to get done. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, doing these rebuilds is by far the most enjoyable thing that I've done when it comes to the long form content. And to be honest, it keeps me ticking. It keeps my brain going, it keeps me engaged. I just love it. And dare I say it, this bike is, it's starting to look nicer than my Gen 3. So yeah, make of that what you will. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.